Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is DreamFiction and today we will be reading the story Issei, the True Dragon of the Apocalypse, translated into English by Jyanzein.
Let's see how much your words are worth. Those were Vali's last words before his helmet materialized again, ready for combat. Issei mimicked his action, with the addition of stretching out his arm and causing a violet magic circle to appear. At the same time a katana appeared with its sheath. The Sekuyuite drew the sword from its sheath, opting for a distinctive pose, having one foot forward, while the tip of the katana pointed at the albino's neck. The air crossed between the two and circled around to where the other spectators were, who by now had taken care of all the enemies and were together, watching the fight that was about to take place. Meanwhile, Auden and Yusaka seemed more attentive to break the powerful magic circles that held them captive, but they still watched out of the corner of their eyes what was about to happen. Meanwhile, a little further away, Penemu and Tiamat were standing on the shattered ceiling of the room where the meeting had once been, watching intently what was about to unfold. "Shouldn't we intervene?" Penemu asked, causing Tiamat to put her hands on her hips with a half-smile. "First, don't you want to see what he might be capable of after all his training?" Tiamat answered her with another question, causing a small smile to appear on the cadre's face. "Yes, and very much so," Penemu replied, fixing her gaze on her beloved. Despite the time that passed, the two were still in complete silence until it was finally broken. But not by them. It was the work of their tenants. The green gem glowed brightly in Issei's hand, indicating the dragon's presence. "From now on, whatever awaits either of us two," Drake's tone sounded even harsher and more piercing than ever. "It's death. Star." The dragon's final words caused both Issei and Vali to reassert their combat stances. "In that case, let me tell you the same, Drake." Vali's wings flashed brightly, at the same time Albion's words came through. Inside their helmet, both of them frowned, and everything around them went black. On one side of Issei, Drake's flaming face could be seen. While on the other side, it could be seen as next to Vali was the white flaming face of Albion. Not even those imaginary flames were audible. The silence was breathtaking, as if both bearers were waiting for some kind of signal to start fighting. "All right." Drake's figure became fully present at Issei's side. The 10th battle between the White Dragon Emperor and the Red Dragon Emperor. Albion's figure mimicked Drake. Both dragons clenched their teeth tightly. "Begin." Both dragons launched themselves at an impressive speed and collided loudly, creating a great burst of light. A second later, two people in Drake and Albion's armor could be seen trying to kick and punch each other, covering and trying to counter their blows. The figures were changing in size, and the scenery depicting them around them changed from wars to completely desolate wastelands or to massive destructions, symbolically representing all the battles of the Securities and Hakuukas up to the present day. Finally, the symbolic act ended, where you could see how Issei and Vali were dancing in combat on par with the above demonstrated. White flames adorned the half where Vali stood, while red flames adorned the other half where Issei stood. Vali was in charge of dodging and blocking all of Issei's blows with great elegance, spinning on himself. The movements of both were extremely perfect, so it was a delight for the eyes of anyone who liked fights. Still, it was clear who was faster. And, therefore, it was clear to see who was having more of an advantage. Issei was trying to cut him with his katana, but was repeatedly met with the great surprise that Vali's armor was vastly stronger than his own. He assumed that this difference was mostly due to the power gap between the two. But that alone made him think of a quick solution. "I just need more bluntness," he thought, widening his eyes under his helmet. In one of Vali's many blocks with his hands, the katana went flying upwards, causing the albino to miss immensely. "How strange. I'm sure I didn't increase my strength," he thought. When he saw that Issei had left a strange opening, the albino tried to strike him in the chest, only to be surprised when his rival grabbed his arm with both hands, to then propel himself and make a great somersault, taking the katana with his feet and making the blade fall at an extremely high speed, piercing the side of Vali's helmet, producing a deep cut on his cheek. Or at least, so it was supposed, due to the fact that a small amount of blood was ejected from the helmet by the cut. The metal part of the sword dug completely into the ground behind Vali and cracked the ground, emphasizing the speed it had taken in its path. Far from losing her balance, as her body twisted by the blunt cut indicated, Vali pulled herself together from one second to the next, something that took Issei by complete surprise. He barely gave him time to cover his chest in an X shape before rolling backwards from the huge blow his opponent had dealt him. After rolling a few meters, Issei somehow managed to compose himself and landed on the ground. His gaze parked for a short second on the completely shattered armor of his arms, which quickly regenerated thanks to Drake. He raised his gaze again to his destined rival, who was wiping the blood protruding from his helmet. Finally, Volley waved the blood to the ground and disappeared in a huge burst of speed that generated a huge blizzard in his former position. Issei quickly stood up and leaned both his hands forward, stopping Volley's blow by a miracle. Both continued with the dance of kicks, punches, jumps over each other, and other acrobatics. This time, that sequence lasted less time, as Volley caught both of Issei's hands with his own, creating a sort of grapple. The bodies of both were trembling intensely, indicating that they were propelling a great deal of their strength not to yield to the power of the other. Volley dematerialized his helmet, denoting his bleeding cheek. "I'm starting to get bored of this," he exclaimed with a big grin, at the same time letting go of his grip on one of Issei's hands, though he still exerted pressure against it with his arm. Issei watched the hand in complete disbelief as he saw a white-colored orb grow larger and larger in his opponent's hand. "You're too easily distracted," the albino exclaimed, delivering a hard knee to Issei's chin that shattered the lower area of his helmet, then kicking him hard in his face, sending him flying and ending up smashing his helmet in the process. Volley took a big leap backwards and aimed the orb in the direction of his target, which still hadn't finished bouncing off the ground. Dragon shot. A huge arc of white light that shattered everything in its path was sent towards Issei. Luckily, Issei managed to respond in time and recompassed himself in the air, landing fruitfully while creating 3 magic circles in front of him that acted as a barrier. The powerful dragon shot impacted against the first barrier, damaging it greatly and shattering it in a matter of a second, as well as the second one. Finally, Issei used much of his strength to hold the third one, causing the barrier to crack quite a bit, while the excess energy passed to his sides. Issei could not help but be impressed at such a magnitude of magical power. He felt like he would be swept away by the attack just because of how fast and sweeping it was. A few seconds passed where everything he saw was only white because of the magic, until finally the attack ceased and a huge curtain of dust was generated in the whole area that did not allow to see anything. Issei abandoned his posture, seeing how his magic circle was only a breath away from being destroyed. His ears pricked up as he heard a strange movement to his right. "Over there," he thought in alarm, looking to the right of the barrier, only to widen his eyes in shock when it was his katana. A feint. Although Issei's resolve had been rather quick, he didn't have enough time to turn around and respond to the attack at the same time. Issei received a large kick to his neck, which twisted like jelly. Issei's pain-covered eyes were quite clear, at the same time as his whole body violently slammed into his own barrier, finishing it off by shattering it. Finally, he could see Volley's full body appear out of the dust, smiling a huge hungry grin, as he was about to deliver what was supposed to be the final blow. Issei used the same flip of his body in his favor to grab his katana still in the air, delivering a strong sword into the air that took the albino by complete surprise, but he was still able to dodge it, raising his arm quickly. Although, in that way, he cancelled his attack, and his body was completely exposed. Issei didn't waste a second, and with his other hand, he struck a strong blow to Volley's abdomen, generating a huge air current, indicating that the attack had been very strong. But Volley's armor had not received any kind of damage. A big smile appeared again on the albino's face. "I must admit, that was a good move," Volley thought, as he began to aim his other fist at his opponent's chest. "But the difference between us is abysmal." Just before the albino's fist embedded into his chest, Issei opened his fist, which was still resting on Volley's abdomen, denoting a small reddish orb. Dragon shot. Drake's loud scream was followed by a great scream from Volley, as his entire torso was exposed to a powerful reddish light that severely damaged his armor, causing him to spit out a large amount of blood in the process. Issei did not waste the opportunity, delivering a strong upward punch under his chin, to then deliver a large kick to his chest, sending him flying and causing Volley to roll for the first time in the entire fight. Issei grabbed his neck as he rubbed it with a small grimace of pain, watching as Volley slowly got up from the ground. "That's amazing," Issei thought. He took a dragon shot at point-blank range, and even then his armor didn't give in to the attack. He finished, genuinely impressed at the power of his opponent. "I must admit, you have a lot of interesting tricks," the albino commented, wiping the trickle of blood from his lips. "But I'm sure you copied that last one from me." he stated with quite a bit of grace in his words. It doesn't matter what tricks you use, though. After all, you're already using the most balance breaker can give you right now, while I haven't even used my sacred gear. He concluded, causing Issei to look at him with great intrigue. Your sacred gear? He asked, opting for an attack pose with his katana. Each sacred gear has its own power, explained the albino, something Issei already knew. While yours is in charge of increasing, mine is in charge of reducing. He added, causing Issei to widen his eyes at the revelation. My power is known as Divide. Why didn't you use it yet? Issei asked immediately after hearing his words. Volley simply folded his arms with a smile. Divide is a much more complex power than Boost. I need to get in contact with the user I want to apply my power to. It can be either physical or magical. Issei couldn't help but frown. That doesn't answer my question, he exclaimed. A smile appeared on the albino's face, which was answer enough for Issei. Though, if that hadn't been enough, Volley raised both of her hands to emphasize the massive destruction that had been caused by a single one of his dragon shot. Basically, he was telling him to his face that he was too weak to have the need to use that power. Damn! Issei exclaimed with venom in his voice as he reaffirmed his grip on his katana. Do you have something to tell me? Volley asked with his smile still in force, bracing himself for the shock. The albino widened his eyes dangerously. Why don't you say it to my face? Finally, the two of them were thrown off at an enormous speed, heading for a collision. Just when there was a meter left for the two to meet, everything started to move in slow motion for Issei as he thought. I know very well that I am much weaker than him. The thoughts made Issei's gaze slowly soften outwardly. I know very well that I don't stand a chance if I fight with my own strength. The thoughts continued. But, I'm not like you, Volley. The albino's hand slowly began to form into a fist and raise against his opponent's abdomen, while Issei changed the trajectory of the katana to a more diagonal one, rather oddly. Yes, I love battles just like you. But, if it's to protect my comrades, the image of Riaz and the others entered the scene for a short second. If it's to protect my best friends, the image of Mitsuda and Motohama flashed through his head. He didn't know the reason, but in his thought Gasper, Azazel, and Tannen were also added. Finally, Issei's eyes slowly moved to where his reason for being was. If it's to protect my world together with those women, and their world, endless memories flashed through Issei's mind, projecting all those precious moments he spent together with those two wonderful women. Those two beautiful women who were able to shake his whole being even at a time like this. I don't care to borrow the power of my enemy. Finally, time returned to normal, and both blows collided at their fates, generating a huge rumble and crater at their feet, which raised a small curtain of dust in response. Everyone watched with great intrigue as the dust disappeared. Everyone was surprised, except for Tiamat and Penemu, who gritted their teeth angrily at the sight. The two figures were still stuck together from their two attacks, although the forcefulness of one over the other was quite clear. Issei's legs shook intensely from the pain, while he tried his best not to vomit. Finally, it became impossible for him to hold on, so he lowered his gaze and vomited a huge amount of blood, being able to see more clearly how Volley's fist had gone completely through his armor, reaching his abdomen, and almost piercing him in the process. Meanwhile, Volley just sighed in disappointment as he saw that Issei's katana had dug deep into the armor in a downward diagonal fashion, just below the gem at the center of his chest. Now can you see the difference? The albino asked, clearly bored with the combat. My strike went all the way through your armor, while you could barely get through my armor using a katana. You couldn't even cut through my skin. Volley looked at his rival's shadowed gaze with mild curiosity. But, you could have tried to pierce my neck, knowing that the density of my armor in that place is much lower. I doubt someone like you would have overlooked that. Issei coughed up even more blood, generating a small puddle at his feet. If I had, you would have dodged it. You know your weaknesses quite well, just like me. That's why you let it hit you, because you saw no real danger. Issei replied, coughing up some more blood. After a second, Issei raised his gaze with a strange smile, something that undoubtedly confused Volley. Besides, this is precisely what I was looking for. After his words, Issei tightened his grip on his katana with all his might. The albino could only raise an eyebrow at not understanding this, but it didn't take that long to receive an answer. Using the katana as leverage, he had the gem in Volley's armor ejected. At the same time there was a small silver explosion as the albino lost his armor in a forced manner. Everyone was in complete disbelief at this move, especially Vali himself, who stood up from the ground and watched as Issei stood up in the distance, while the gem he had extracted remained at his side. Issei dropped to his knees and spat out another large amount of blood, then clutched his abdomen tightly at the searing, burning pain that coursed through his stomach. It was slowly fading, but no doubt the blow had been far more critical than it appeared. He knew quite well that it was going to hurt like hell when his body cooled down. I can't lie to you, you surprised me. It's been a long time since the last time someone managed to remove my armor completely. The albino commented, then materialized his armor again. But how is it that a move like that can help bring you victory? He asked, unable to come up with an answer on his own. That won't help me achieve victory. He answered him, wiping away the blood that ran down the corner of his lips. Issei took the gem next to him, looking up and giving him a predatory smile. But this does. Concluded, causing Vali and everyone else's eyes to widen in shock after what they heard. Do you intend to use the white dragon's power? Riaz asked, incredulous at what she heard. Penemu was alarmed at what he heard and was already about to leap towards the fight to interrupt it, but Tiamat stopped him with her hand. Remember, he replaced his demonic arm with that of a dragon. The dragon stated with great calm. If he suffered no consequences on that occasion, this is just child's play. Drake, you always say I have a great affinity for dragons. Issei exclaimed, raising the gem to as high as his hand could go. I understand how you think, mate, and I'm with you all the way. Drake exclaimed in the same enthusiastic and somewhat overlaid with madness tone as Issei. Vali just aimed to watch wide-eyed as Issei tried to embed the gem in his left arm, causing a red and white screeching light to start fighting each other. Are you okay, partner? Shouted Drake at the top of his lungs, so that Issei could hear his voice over the incredibly annoying noise the lights were making. My arm hurts like hell, but that's a long way from stopping me. The young man shouted back with another shout, holding a huge grin on his face, as he felt the power of the two celestial dragons begin to merge. Finally, a strange violet glow reigned over the other two glows, blinding everyone for a few seconds. When everyone opened their eyes again, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Issei's armor on his left arm, Zenobia commented, widening her eyes beyond belief. It's white. He has fused the power of two incompatible entities. This is unheard of, Albion declared with a tone full of disbelief. Though without a doubt, the most impressed of all was Vali. They only needed to see his face to prove it. Drake? Issei asked, clenching his left fist tightly, which now possessed a white aura and armor. As expected, no secondary effects. The dragon exclaimed, rather excited at what he was witnessing. Finally, Vali snapped out of his stupor and began to laugh frantically, as if he had been cast the best joke in the world. Something Issei didn't receive very well, and his skull was proof of it. What do you think is so funny? He asked, pointing at him. It's not funny, this is fucking entertaining. Shouted Vali with a huge grin on his face. The albino pointed at him with great excitement. I don't know exactly who you are, Haidu Issei, but you're the most interesting guy I've come across so far. He shouted with the same excitement with which he pointed at him, then thought carefully. A somewhat confused look crossed Issei's face as he saw Vali's expression change dramatically. But, seeing what I've seen, I think you might be even more interesting, he thought, then raised his arms and gave her a somewhat macabre smile. To make this even more entertaining, I'll take it upon myself to kill your parents once I'm done with you. What? Tiamat wondered, rather impressed at the albino's outburst. He's provoking him. Penemu answered her doubt quickly. He knows Issei hides much more potential. He wants to unleash that potential through his emotions, since the boosted gear responds to the emotions of its bearer. Do you think Issei can go even further? Tiamat asked, thinking that the balance breaker was already at its limit. The limit of that balance breaker is only reached when your emotions overflow, and you have enough level to reach it. It works just like the evolutions of that same balance breaker. Penemu replied, unable to help but stifle a small smirk. But, Vali won't accomplish anything if he tries for a place where emotions are almost non-existent. A smirk shot across Issei's face, something that surprised Vali. If you're trying to make me angry, you're not on the right track. He commented, crossing his arms. My relationship with my parents is broken. He stated, indicating that he didn't care in the least if anything happened to them. This was certainly a setback to the albino's plans. In that case, he thought, averting his gaze to where Riaz and her servant stood. Vali pointed at them, causing his rival to follow him with his gaze. Then, I'll start with your beloved comrades. He spat, causing Issei to grit his teeth slightly. You won't do anything, you bastard. He shouted angrily at him, something Vali met with a rather deep stare. That's far from enough, he thought, only to have his gaze then settle on Tiamat. He knows Tiamat could kill me with a blow, so it's not worth trying to go in that direction. Vali closed his eyes for a short second, deep in thought. So, all that's left for me to do is. Vali fixed his gaze on Penemu, frowning slightly. I guess I don't lose anything by trying. Before Issei lunged at him for his words, Vali held up his hand in a sign for him to stop. On second thought, I should leave you to die and force you to watch me torture Penemu to death in the worst possible way. At those moments, Issei's hair shadowed his gaze. That's not going to do it either, Penemu thought aloud, waiting for the reaction of her much-loved student. In those moments, Issei's body began to tremble with anger, at the same time his gauntlet glowed brightly. A flood of memories of him and Penemu flashed through his head. Of that time when they both witnessed the fireworks. Of that time when he went with her for a single day to the beach. Of all those times he slept next to her, and the way she would open her heart every time they were alone. All those precious moments. Her beautiful smile. Bearer of Albion. Drake's voice echoed, making everyone look rather curious, especially the albino. If there's a next time, you'd better choose your words more carefully. He concluded, only to have a huge surge of crimson power surge up into the sky afterwards, generating huge currents of brutal airs. Are you serious? Wondered Penemu aloud as she covered her face because of all that was happening. A faint blush was roaming her cheeks because of her future lover's reaction. Issei clenched his teeth tightly as he raised his gaze, crossing his arms in X. Finally, he abruptly stretched his arms to the side, causing all the crimson energy so potent emanating from him to concentrate solely on the armor, generating a huge explosion of ultimate power, where the following word was heard. Explosion. The curtain of dust slowly disappeared, dazzling a completely serious Issei, as the crimson glow faded and appeared on his figure, showing that he was holding a lot of power. His crimson armor, now even more crimson, looked more imposing with that glow, and that thin reddish aura so pure that it surrounded him completely. A small sideways smile appeared on Vali's face as he saw the result. That's what I was waiting for, the albino whispered, then clenched his fists tightly. Ah. A loud scream erupted from Vali's lungs, causing a huge glow of white to blind everyone for a few seconds. The clouds of hell were pierced by this powerful aura, which was controlled much faster than the previous one, returning to the albino's body at a noticeably faster speed. He stretched his arms out to the sides as Issei did at the end, causing a final small burst of power to be generated around him. After a few seconds, Vali appeared out of the dust with his armor glowing with the same intensity, and with that thin pure white aura surrounding him. Though unlike Issei, Vali seemed to be smiling, quite pleased at what was about to happen. The two began to approach in slow steps, causing everyone to fall completely silent, watching with great attention. That energy, Xerxes commented, completely impressed. Yes, it is the power of the celestial dragons at its purest. The limit of the balance breaker. Azazel commented, completely awed at the sight. Finally, the two stood face to face, where the two shared a rather deep gaze. The two auras were violently clashing against each other. Vali was simply enjoying what was transpiring, but Issei didn't seem to reciprocate the feeling. If you touch even a single hair on Penemu, Issei's voice sounded as low, harsh and stern as he had ever heard it before. I swear I will make you meet fates worse than death. After hearing his words, Penemu could feel every fiber in her body jump with a myriad of precious emotions. Her completely shocked face and the huge blush that covered much of her face was all Tiamat needed to see to know that the woman had fallen even more in love with Issei, if that was possible. Am I really that important to him? The cadre wondered, feeling her heart pounding and her chest burning with passion. A passion that only Issei could control. Vali's smile didn't falter after his words. In fact, it only increased. Prove it with actions, not words. If you touch even a single hair on Penemu's head, Issei's voice sounded as low, harsh and stern as he had ever heard it before. I swear I will make you meet fates worse than death. Vali's smile did not falter after his words. In fact, it only increased. Prove it with actions, not words. An overwhelming silence descended on the battlefield. The spectators watched intently as the outcome of the fight was about to unfold, as they took it upon themselves to protect Aden and Yusaka, who had not yet finished undoing the magic circles created through the power of office. Riaz looked at everyone, puzzled by their attitudes. Is no one planning to do anything? The Redite asked, earning a glare from everyone. I mean, the vast majority here are known to be the strongest of their factions. She concluded, causing Serziches to give her a serious look. It wouldn't do any good. He replied quickly, then looked at Vali. We don't have much knowledge of the Hakuyuiku, but we wouldn't have anything to do against him. The Demon King turned his gaze, fixing it on Tiamat. Only she could do anything. Anyone who intervenes will die before they do anything. The Dragoness commented, causing everyone to freeze. This is not a battle that concerns any of us. She finished, then rested her hand on top of Penemu's head. Are you okay? She asked, unable to hide her mocking tone. You've had that big blush on your face for several seconds now. After hearing her words, Penemu shook her head hard, trying to shake off all those precious sensations coursing through her body. The hue and expression of her face returned to her usual one, though internally she was still fighting against those beautiful feelings. Hey Kaneko! Kaneko! Gasper shouted, trying to break free from his bonds. Damn it, why isn't anyone coming to help us? He exclaimed with comical tears in his eyes, as he watched as the fight was a second away from starting. Finally, the first to make any moves was Issei. And what a move! Issei had raised his hand from one second to the other, being stopped by Vali with his forearm. The impact generated a huge wave of wind that reached the spectators. And just as quickly as that wind appeared, it disappeared. What the? Thought almost all the Gremory, at the apparent leap of power their comrade had. Vali was quick to answer that outburst, trying to hit him with an exact same blow. Ironically, Issei covered it with the same intensity and technique as Vali. The small shockwave was followed almost immediately by a larger one as their knees collided, causing them both to be dragged back several meters by the very inertia of the blow. Still, their stances had remained invulnerable, and the large mark their feet left on the ground was clear proof of that. Hey, Vali spoke, preparing to jump as he opted for an offensive pose. Let's stop playing games, shall we? Issei didn't respond, but he gave him a hint that he agreed with his idea when he opted for a pose quite similar to his own. From that moment on, Vali's smile changed to a radically different expression, opting for a seriousness much like Issei's. They both hit a great leap, causing Riaz and her servants to widen their eyes in shock as Issei and Vali's figure was barely distinguishable. The first to attempt to connect a blow was Vali, who missed by mere inches as he was dodged. The albino didn't give up there, chasing and attacking him again, where the brown flipped backwards. Issei did not rest there, as he made a quick leap to the side, where a small curtain of dust was generated, indicating that Vali again came close to hitting him. There was no rest at all, as Issei had to quickly jump to the side to dodge another attack. Ria's eyes were wide open as he tried to keep up with the fast movements of the two men, something that was nearly impossible. The speed of the two was so high that she had to be guided by the curtains of dust and the small red and silver blurs she occasionally saw. Basically, it seemed as if they were both teleporting endlessly from one place to another because of the enormous speed. Finally, both of them began to float with great lightness, while a rain of punches that were incredibly fast was seen from both sides. In that way, both Issei and Vali were dodging and blocking the dozens of attacks per second, hoping that one of their punches managed to hit the target first. You could see how they seemed to teleport from place to place as they created small craters. In one of the many attacks, Issei had to take obligatory cover, so he was thrown backwards by a blow, being quickly followed by his opponent. The two did not even take a second to collide again, where Issei seemed to be able to keep his guard up, dodging and trying to counterattack again, implying that he had recovered very quickly and managed to dock in Vali's rhythm again. Although as predictable, Issei gave in again a little after a few seconds due to the strenuous work, making him forced to dodge without even being able to counterattack. After 3 blows dodged in different places, Issei was forced to cover himself in an X shape, causing a small shockwave to appear all over the place. Issei was heavily dragged down by the blow, while the albino didn't seem to lower his forcefulness one bit, hoping to break the Brown's defense with his fist still pushing the armor. Something he achieved when he used his other hand, delivering a strong blow to his cheek that twisted his face to the side, generating another small shockwave. And obviously, that was not at all good in fights where they don't give you a break. Issei! Shouted Riaz and her servants, watching as a great rain of blows began to fall on his face, threatening to destroy his helmet. Far from being overwhelmed by the pressure, Issei quickly thought of a plan, slowing his opponent's crawl to a crawl, then delivering a hard double kick to Vali's chin, taking him several meters into the air. Issei's only visible movement to the gremmery was when he flexed his legs, as he then disappeared. "I can't see them," Ria's thought, gritting her teeth tightly as by pure intuition she raised her face, watching as Issei appeared behind Vali's back, who was apparently still flying from the previous blow and hadn't managed to recompose himself apparently. Just when the Brown was about to give him a strong punch, Vali disappeared from his sight for a short second. The albino was about to send him to the ground with a strong kick, but Issei responded in the same way as his opponent and dodged the attack at a great speed. Several slow but very strong and charged attacks were dodged by both of them at a great speed until finally a loud rumble was heard and everything was shaking. Vali spat out a large amount of blood when Issei kneed him hard in his stomach. When it seemed that he was not going to respond after such an attack, the albino instantly pulled himself together and dodged a punch from Issei, countering it with a strong blow to the chestnut's helmet that made him spin around in the air several times, although he was able to stabilize himself quickly. Issei looked ahead to where the albino previously stood, widening his eyes when he saw that he had disappeared. Not even a second passed for him to feel a sharp pain in the back of his neck, product of Vali's punch. Issei fell at full speed, creating a small crater, albeit a rather deep one. Without even a second had passed, both were already fighting away from that crater, with the same previous mechanics of quick punches, dodge, and try to counterattack. After a few seconds, Vali tried to sweep him, failing when Issei did a big somersault. The albino quickly followed his opponent, though he failed to anticipate the kick that came from behind, getting dragged backwards a few inches, as his stance was too solid. Issei landed a few meters away from him, only to be forced to jump quickly when Vali appeared next to him, burying his fist in the ground. The albino mimicked the Brown's action to dodge a kick. The cycle was broken just as it began, as Vali arrived at an enormous speed and delivered a strong kick to Issei's helmet, although the albino could not escape unharmed as he received a kick of the same forcefulness. The faces of both turned noticeably due to the inertia of the blow and then flew away with multiple turns due to the forcefulness of the attack. Both managed to recover at the same time, demonstrating that the attack had not been strong enough to destabilize them. Finally, Issei flew several meters with the idea of making an aerial attack, but he did not expect Vali to appear behind him. Issei braked abruptly, turning around quickly. Vali dematerialized his helmet, denoting his completely serious face. Issei mimicked his action, giving him a rather similar look. After a few seconds, a smile appeared on Vali's face as he stretched his hands out to the sides, causing dozens and dozens of magic circles to appear behind his back. Issei widened his eyes slightly at this, then flew off at full speed. A great shower of small magical attacks began to follow him from behind, generating great tremors and a large amount of dust. Finally, Issei got tired of this small magical chase and began to fly towards the attacks, dodging them all in a millimetric way. When he was just a few meters away from Vali, the Brown raised his palm to the front while a ball of energy was present in his hand. Just before numerous magical attacks hit him, the following could be heard. Dragon shot. The small magic attacks were completely destroyed, as were the magic circles. Vali was ejected out of the smokescreen with his arms in X, indicating that he had managed to cover himself from the attack. The albino could not rest for long, because as soon as he landed on the ground, Issei came at full speed, giving him a strong blow that he could only block because he was still with his arms crossed. Vali tried to counterattack, but Issei blocked Vali's fist with his own fist. Issei tried to attack in the same way with his other hand, but the albino imitated the Brown's block. Both grabbed his hands tightly, initiating a struggle. Both dematerialized their hooves while their arms were shaking intensely from the great amount of force they were using. They were both clenching their teeth tightly, indicating that they were using a great amount of their strength. Aya! They both began to scream, causing a silver and crimson aura to surround them. Both auras clashed with great intensity, struggling to overpower the other. Divide. Boost. 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 Divide. Boost. 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 Divide. Boost. 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 The nearest debris began to break into 1,000 pieces at the same time that great tremors began to be felt. Divide. Boost. 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 The clash between each other's abilities was still present as the ground around them began to crumble into 1,000 pieces, and their feet sank into the earth. Until both Vali and Issei nearly fell over as they received a powerful blow to their faces. The newly created great rain of blows caused great tremors, while the oars were still in constant struggle, and the ground kept breaking. Vali's eyes widened in great surprise, and after a second, he received a strong blow that sent him flying, generating a great line of destruction in its path. With the idea of not letting him rest, Issei quickly chased after him, though he was surprised when Vali pulled himself together out of nowhere and aimed a wide orb at his face. Dragon shot. Issei quickly materialized his katana, then crossed it in front of him. A second later, a huge explosion shook a large part of the battlefield, making everyone had to cover their eyes before the white flash and the huge blizzard generated. Vali watched the huge curtain of dust even with his hand bent forward, keeping an eye out for any movement. After a second, the albino couldn't help but be surprised when Issei emerged from the dust into the sky, seeing that his armor was almost intact. "What's that sword?" he thought to himself, watching as his rival dematerialized it again. Not even a magical katana would be able to completely stop an attack of that magnitude. The albino was so distracted in his thoughts, he couldn't help but raise both eyebrows when he saw Issei raise both of his hands to the sides, beginning to create two dragon shot. Two dragon shot? Serziches wondered aloud. What does he plan to do? Roswas followed his thoughts. Tiamat hummed, gaining Penmu's attention. This could get very interesting, she concluded, sketching a smile. When the two orbs were as large as their palms, Issei joined hands, causing everyone's eyes to widen in shock as the energy combined. Issei's hands generated a large orb that threatened to explode at any moment. He must be borneering, Vali thought aloud, keeping his expression stoic as he usually did when faced with such situations, though the slight twitching of his eyebrows made his surprise evident. "I can't throw that," Riaz commented, then looking at her brother. "If you throw it, the weaker ones would die." Serziches commented, watching as the large orb continued to grow larger and larger. "What are they waiting for?" Issei's shout made everyone freeze. "Protect Gasper and Kaneko." Roswas. Auden shouted, causing the Valkyrie to nod and come to them quickly, creating a large barrier. "No way!" Asia exclaimed with wide eyes. "He seriously intends to throw it!" Michael exclaimed, creating a large amount of barriers along with Gabriel and the others to protect everyone, especially those who would not withstand the attack. Meanwhile, Tiamat and Penmu remained with their arms crossed, indicating that they were not worried about the forcefulness of the massive magical attack. After getting over the shock, a small smile appeared on Vali's face. "It may be a very powerful attack, but do you think you'll be able to hit me at that distance?" he asked, only to watch in slight disbelief as Issei began to descend towards him with the huge orb. Vali quickly started to move, unable to help but chuckle slightly. "Did you really think I would just stand still for him to receive an attack of such magnitude?" he asked, as he floated at a great speed and was being chased by Issei a few meters away. Then, something surprising happened. The Albion gem that Issei embedded in his armor glowed brightly. Divide. Vali lost his balance at the unexpected reduction of his power, falling to the ground. By the time he managed to get back on his feet, it was too late. Issei was standing in front of him, smiling a small smile. "Thank you for telling me how your ability worked," he commented, filling himself with pleasure as Vali's body contorted in overdrive, indicating that he hadn't expected this ending at all. Dragon shot. A strong crimson light appeared in every corner of the place. The huge air currents hit the barriers hard, cracking them slightly. Everyone on the other side stared at the immense amount of power in complete disbelief, while the powerful crimson light made their bodies look like mere figures until they were finally completely absorbed by the great energy. After several sounds, the ripple sound finally ended, and the intense red color also subsided. Everyone was fine, although the barriers were noticeably damaged, except for Roswas's, which seemed to withstand the impact without any problems. Issei lowered his arms and let the sweat run down his face as he watched the smoke and dust slowly dissipate. A gigantic line of destruction shot out in front of him, seemingly endless. All around him, the ground had been made completely smooth only by the huge blizzards generated by the attack around him. The Brown's eyes widened in shock as a figure began to distinguish itself through the dust, finally revealing the albino, who had lost the entire top of his armor, along with his shirt. "Sorry, but you need a lot more than that," he commented with a smile, as he wiped the blood that trickled from his lips. His torso appeared to be damaged, though it was nothing serious. "Did you see it too?" Peninu asked, receiving a quick nod from Tiamat. "His armor changed at the last second," she replied, as she watched Vali regenerate his armor. Issei quickly pulled himself together and clenched his fists tightly, causing the crimson aura to surround him again. Though you could tell by his face that he was somewhat exhausted, unlike Vali, who was as fresh as a daisy. Issei quickly flew in his direction, though Vali dodged his attack very easily and landed a heavy blow to his helmet, generating another small shockwave that signaled the return of the melee attacks. Issei took advantage of the same inertia of the blow to deliver a strong kick to his head that forced Vali back a step. Again, the frantic and extremely violent attacks made an appearance, although now they were even more powerful and faster. The speed was so high that one could barely distinguish the movements of his arms and legs. By using a higher speed, one could feel how the tremors became stronger when a blow hit the target, causing the affection's body to lose stability because of it, although it recovered practically instantly. The forceful blows on the faces were seen on one side as well as on the other, causing the tremors to increase. Even the earth began to collapse under such pressure. After several blows received, both ended up losing their helmets and were forced to dodge the following blows. Each time they dodged a blow, a small line of destruction was generated only by the great force that carried the blow behind it. The rain of blows continued with more and more ferocity, further increasing the tremors and causing all the nearby debris to begin to shatter from the stray blows of both opponents. After having made the longest and most forceful punching contest of the fight, Vali broke the formation, leaping away by a great leap and starting to fly. The albino couldn't help but grit his teeth slightly as he was forced to swerve his flight to dodge a punch from the brown. Vali quickly tipped his hand forward. Dragon shot. The energy ball basically regenerated instantly, but Issei was able to react in time to dodge it, to then appear behind Vali's back and try to kick him. The albino noticed this and cut off his attack quickly, dodging the attack with a somersault. Issei tried to attack him again, but missed, receiving a big kick from the albino in the back that made him spit out a small amount of blood. Before falling, Issei was able to recompose himself in time, though that was not enough. He didn't have time to dodge the punch to his face, but at least he was able to hit him back, causing another small shockwave to go off all over the place, at the same time as they both spat out a large amount of blood due to the fact that they were no longer in their helmets. While Vali was sent skyward, Issei slammed into the ground, becoming sunk in the crater he himself had created. Vali somersaulted in the air and quickly pulled himself together, only to hear two words. Dragon shot. A large amount of crimson energy was shot in the form of lightning towards Vali, who received it without warning. Vali tightly closed his eyes and gritted his teeth as he received the attack, then let out a loud scream and spread his arms wide, causing a silver glow to blind everyone momentarily. Issei watched Vali's figure with wide eyes as he tried to regulate his breathing. "This fight has already lost its grace," the albino declared as he showed off his armor, though it had slight changes to the previous one. The huge aura and his thicker, slightly modified armor were proof of that. That's Issei thought, as his eyes twitched slightly. An evolution Peninu completed Issei's thoughts, though she didn't look too surprised at the sight. "Don't get me wrong, it's been fun," he commented as the aura of his armor completely overshadowed Issei's. "But, in case you don't know, you're already at your limit." Hearing his words, Issei fell to his knees as his breathing became more labored and his vision slightly blurred. "But, I made sure not to spend so much." "Magic power?" Vali interrupted, causing Issei to look at him intently. "I may have told you how my ability works, but I didn't tell you everything," Vali explained, causing his rival to widen his eyes. "Unlike Boost, Divide requires magic in order to use it." Vali's smile grew as he saw Issei's expression. "In my case, it's not a problem, as I possess a large amount of magic reserves, and the skill doesn't consume too much. But, considering that the consumption must have increased because you're using a power that isn't yours, and on top of that you have practically scarce magic reserves," Vali raised her shoulders, leaving the end of the answer to Issei's imagination. "No, it can't be," Issei thought aloud, gritting his teeth tightly. "It's been a lot of fun," Vali commented with complete sincerity, dematerializing his helmet. "But fun always comes to an end at some point," he concluded, crossing his arms with a rather piercing look on his face. "It's over." Both Issei and Vali were surprised to see Peninu position herself in front of her beloved, with clear intentions of defending him. Penemu. Issei exclaimed, shocked at the false intervention. You think you can beat me? Vali asked, unable to help but raise an eyebrow. Remember, I've known you for a while now. The cadre commented with great seriousness as she unsheathed her katana. Considering your divide and the strength you contain with the first evolution, I maintain that we are balanced. She explained, causing more than one to be surprised, especially Issei. That's true. Vali commented with complete sincerity. But, that's if you only used divide in my first evolution. He commented, only to have his wings spread out at the top of his lungs. Half dimension. An intense glow and celestial particles took off with great intensity from the wings, causing everything around it to start contracting in a very strange way, as if it was splitting reality in two. What is this? Issei looked from side to side, unable to help but be immensely surprised at what he was witnessing. Didn't you notice, brat? Azazel asked, gaining the aforementioned's attention. Explosion is the ultimate ability of your balance breaker when it reaches its limit, allowing you to unleash maximum augmentations in as little as a second, as well as doubling the power of its bearer. He explained, making Issei begin to realize what he was trying to tell him. The half dimension is the ultimate ability of his balance breaker. I'm surprised you remembered it, since you only saw it once and it was a long time ago. The albino commented, just as the dimension began to vary even more. This ability allows me to have everyone's power, without the need to even get close to them, plus it also halves everyone's size and everything. The only downside to this ability is that it takes a minute to execute. Vali fixed his gaze on Penemu, unable to help but sketch a smile. And according to my calculations, I could hold out for that amount of time against you without any problem. He concluded, only to have his armor glow brightly afterwards, changing shape once again, denoting a much thinner armor, but one that emanated an immense amount of power. Though using my second and final evolution, I could destroy you even before those 2 minutes, and I believe I wouldn't need more than 3 divide to do so. Penemu, I can handle it. I don't plan to leave you alone. Issei couldn't help but be surprised at the cadre's outburst, who seemed to never waver, despite the fact that she was facing an opponent much stronger than her. Well, in that case Vali didn't finish speaking, as he felt a gigantic icy energy make its presence known on the battlefield, causing absolutely everyone to freeze in its presence. I suppose I must act now, Tiamat commented, standing in front of Penemu and Issei with her hands in her pockets. Her long silky hair waved with great energy, as everything around her began to freeze from the presence of her power. Vali simply looked at her with a smile, though the sweat on his face indicated that he wasn't quite serene. I thought you said you wouldn't intervene. Yes, I did say that. And it's your destined fight, something that doesn't concern me. She commented as if it was nothing, only to have her light blue eyes flash dangerously afterwards. But I won't let you kill him. Very well, then. With the Juggernaut drive you won't even have a chance. Tiamat interrupted, causing Vali to look at her intently. With your divide you won't stand a chance either. She added, in a rather dismissive tone of voice. And in the miraculous event that I give you the time to activate your half-dimension, guess what? Tiamat's gaze hardened exceedingly. You don't stand a chance. Tiamat's aura began to stir even more strongly, causing Vali's armor to begin to freeze. Even if I gave you the time to combine all those skills, Tiamat held up one of her fingers, unable to help but give him a rather creepy smile. I could still kill you with one blow. Finally, Isse's killer instinct disappeared, causing everyone's tension to drop noticeably. But, as I said before, it's not my fight. She added with a small sigh. That's why I'm not allowed to kill you. Just get the hell out of here and resume your fight some other time, when Issei is strong enough to kick your ass. Vali and Issei looked at the woman with wide eyes, as they were not expecting that outcome. Just as things seemed to calm down, the albino and the others noticed how the magical seals created through Office's power began to crack. It won't be long now. Auden exclaimed, gritting his teeth slightly. Seeing this, a small smile appeared on Vali's face, as he raised both his hands and created huge magic circles, which quickly collided against the seals, causing them to finish collapsing, creating a glassy sound as they shattered into 1,000 pieces. Vali. A guy with a cane came out of nowhere, visibly startling the albino. Biku? Vali's surprised tone matched his reaction. I'm glad you're okay. The man commented with a smile. I had felt an incredibly gigantic energy a few seconds ago. I thought you'd be dead. Hearing his words, the albino fixed his gaze on Tiamat. I will not die until I defeat everyone one step above me. He declared with great seriousness, then fixed his gaze on Issei. Hi do Issei. Hearing himself being named, Issei glared at him. You are not the weakest security, and you are far from being the strongest. He declared, as a magic circle appeared at his feet. But you are certainly the most interesting. He added with a smile. I hope our next encounter will be even more interesting. Those were the albino's last words before disappearing along with his companion. There was an overwhelming silence for a few seconds. The completely destroyed battlefield was a vivid image of what had happened. Issei, are you okay? The dragoness asked, kneeling down in front of him as she saw that his gaze was shadowed. Finally, Issei gritted his teeth hard and hit the ground with great force. Damn it! He shouted angrily, glaring at Tiamat. If you say it's my battle, if you say you have nothing to do with it. He ranted, shutting his eyes tightly. Then why the hell did you get involved? Issei was immensely surprised when he felt warm hands cup his cheek with great affection that lifted his face. He was forced to look at Tiamat's expression, and he could clearly see that she was not at all pleased with his reaction. Did you even think how I would feel if something happened to you? She asked, causing Issei's eyes to widen even more. Do you know how devastated and shattered I would feel? The dragoness couldn't help but frown slightly. I simply intervened because I didn't want to lose you. Her last words came out in a somewhat pained whisper, which only Issei and Penemu could hear. Issei could do nothing but lower his gaze. He felt like a complete idiot. I'm sorry, he replied with all his regret, only to blush slightly when he felt Tiamat kiss his forehead. As long as you understand, she commented, sketching a sweet smile, denoting her beautiful fangs. I suppose peace between the factions is even more necessary now. Michael commented, receiving a quick nod from everyone. A new criminal organization, Auden thought aloud, giving a small sigh. Any minute now they're going to kill this poor old man with so much stress, he finished, stretching his back. Don't worry, Mr. Auden. Ross stated, being accompanied by Gasper, who was carrying Kaneko. I'll make sure to protect Asgard, and of course, you as well. I know. Replied the god with a small smile. I'd like to keep talking, but we must be going. Serziches stated, giving Beelzebub a quick glance. We are in hell, and I am afraid that the attacks have not been confined solely to our meeting. One of the 3 divisions of the Chaos Brigade was commanded by Vali, and he made it quite clear that he has no evil ambitions, so he should not have attacked the city. Azazel stated, then narrowed his eyes. Though I can't say the same for the other 2 divisions that showed up. Elsewhere in hell. All was flames, destruction, and ruin in that part of the city. Where once stood the mansion of one of the most important pillars, it had been reduced to ashes, as had his entire family. Standing on one of the few pieces of rubble that were not burning, a man stood throwing and catching his spear, apparently amused at the sight. A man appeared behind him along with a woman, both of whom possessed a serious blood-covered face, as did their apparent leader. Although, the latter had a rather satisfied expression on his face. We destroyed all the reserves of the Phoenix Tears and also eradicated the entire family. Commented the man, causing the fellow to stop fiddling with his spear and look at him out of the corner of his eye. Are you sure? He asked. The Phoenix were never easy to kill, for obvious reasons. No doubt. Replied the woman with complete certainty. We also took several samples with us. Chances are that before long, we'll be the only ones possessing Phoenix Tears. A big smile appeared on the man's face after those words. Let's see how the demons survive without their source of regeneration, he stated with great grace, then rose from the rubble seat. It's time to go now. I'd like to do more, but I don't think Rizadam's forces will hold out for much longer. Were we right to trust them, Cow Cow? The woman said, creating a magic circle at her feet. We only agreed on the attack. Not that I trusted them. Declared the now recognized Cow Cow. They are also enemies of humanity, after all. Were the last words heard before he disappeared.
Thank you for watching part 13 of this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing and liking the video. I hope to see you in the next video.